Wow, another video. What's up with that? Anyways, today I'm going to be asking and answering another question. Last time it was how many countries there are. Today we're going to be asking which of these countries is the oldest of the lot. Unlike last time where it was a simple question overcomplicated by stupid people, this time around it's an already complicated question further complicated by pedantic people, such as myself. The big problem with this question is the aspect of continuity, because if a country loses its independence and regains it later, which date do we use as the start date or how long it's been around? The Dominican Republic gives us a good example of this problem. We could start on December 1st, 1821, when the Republic of Spanish Haiti, the independent precursor to the Dominican Republic, declared independence from Spain. This was short-lived, and Spanish Haiti was conquered by regular Haiti just over 2 months later. Then on February 27, 1844, the Dominican Republic declared independence from Haiti, then lost it again 17 years later with a return to Spanish rule, which was undone on September 14, 1863, with the start of the Dominican Restoration War and the re-declaration of independence. So we have 3 possible dates here, one in 1821 with Spanish Haiti as the original Dominican Republic, then one in 1844 when we see an independent country with the current name, and then the last in 1863 as the most recent date of independence. All 3 would be considered equally valid points to start counting, depending on how specifically you want to measure it. The Dominican Republic is just one example, but I'm sure you can think of dozens of others with just as complex chronology. So effectively there's lots of countries that could be the title holder depending on what criteria we count as the first starting date, and every case has its own caveats due to each country's unique history. Today I'm going to be making 2 lists, one for if we allow for breaks in continuity, and another if we only use the most recent date of independence. Let's make things a little simpler by breaking this up into the 6 inhabited continents and seeing what the 5 oldest countries are for each. We're obviously not going to find the oldest country in the Americas, but this is my video and I do what I want, and I say we're doing every continent, including these ones. In North America, the United States comes out on top regardless of how we measure it, being founded in 1781. Before someone says, but Boris, don't you mean 1776? Shut up and Google the Articles of Confederation. I'm not going down that rabbit hole today. It could be argued that the Bahamas has them beat via the Pirate Republic founded in 1706, but whether that can really be considered a predecessor state to the Bahamas, or a state at all, is questionable, so I'm just going to ignore it here. Next up, we have Haiti in second place with independence in 1804, only to split up 2 years later and be reunited in 1820, just in time to extinguish the short-lived Spanish Haiti. Haiti keeps the spot on both lists, since that reunification still comes before any other modern North American state gains independence. Third place is again the same on both lists, with Mexico's Independence Day, September 28, 1821. Fourth place is where things finally diverge. If we allow for breaks in continuity, then the Dominicans come in with Spanish Haiti as their predecessor. But as I've already mentioned twice, that didn't last, so on our other list, the 4th spot goes to Costa Rica, independent of the Central American Republic on November 15, 1838. 5th spot with continuity breaks goes to Nicaragua, which declared independence from Central America several months before Costa Rica, but briefly lost its independence in 1896 with a failed attempt to reunite the region. This, as well as a similar attempt in 1921, excludes all remaining Central American countries from either list. Without continuity breaks, 5th place goes to the Dominican Republic's 1863 restoration of independence, just barely beating Canada by 4 years. Now let's move on to South America, the continent with the fewest number of countries, just 12, and 10 of them first gaining independence in a period of just 18 years, so things are going to be pretty close here. Like with North America, the top spot is the same on both lists, and it goes to Argentina, which declared its independence on May 23, 1810. Now, due to the incredibly messy and complicated early history of Argentina, it could be argued the date should be later, but I feel like I don't have enough of an understanding of the Argentine civil wars to go into that, so I'm going to play it safe and keep this initial date. In second place, we diverge into 2 lists. With continuity breaks, Chile takes second with independence just 5 months after Argentina on September 18th, only to be reconquered by Spain in 1814. Without continuity breaks, the silver medal goes to Paraguay, which just narrowly avoided being partitioned in the 1870s. Third place is taken by Paraguay for the continuity breaks list, but on our other list, Chile gets it for that 1817 restoration. In fourth place, we have Venezuela on the first list, which would go on to lose its independence 3 separate times in the decade after this first declaration, on July 14, 1811. On list 2, fourth place goes to Colombia, with the date of December 17, 1819. Now, this is Gran Colombia I'm talking about, not Colombia, so it could be argued these are 2 separate countries, but whatever, my list, my rules. And to round out this continent, fifth place goes to Colombia, with its original independence as the United Provinces of New Granada before Spanish reconquest. And on the other list, it goes to Brazil with its 1822 independence. Moving across the Atlantic now to Europe, where we start to get the really old countries, starting with San Marino, independent from the Roman Empire in 301 AD. There's a lot of uncertainty around San Marino's early history. This is the traditional date, which may not be 100% actual, but it is for certain that San Marino is a really old country, and I have no reason to doubt the 301 date, so I'm just going to roll with it. San Marino was briefly occupied by a Papal States governor, Giulio Alberoni, in the 18th century, which some people might count as an interruption of sovereignty, but since the country itself was never actually de-established, and this guy went rogue rather than it being an actual attempt by the Papal States to conquer San Marino, I won't count it. San Marino takes the oldest place on both lists. Good for them. Europe's second oldest country with continuity breaks would be Serbia, with the first Serbian principality being founded around 626. Though, like with San Marino, the details of this early history are poorly documented, so take that year with a pinch of salt. If we don't allow for continuity breaks, second place goes to France, starting with the Treaty of Verdun in 843, which split the Carolingian Empire in 3. It could be argued that France should have a starting date of 481, when Clovis united the Salian and Ripuarian Franks into a single kingdom, and many French king lists will start with Clovis, but generally, people consider the Frankish kingdom to be a separate thing from France, albeit an important predecessor. Bronze medal goes to Bulgaria for the first list, with the founding of the First Bulgarian Empire in 681, though, like with France, the argument could be made for an earlier date with Old Great Bulgaria in 632, but not only was that in a totally different location, it wouldn't actually change Bulgaria's position on the list. On the second list, Denmark takes this spot, with the first king, Gorm the Old, taking the position around 936, which again, like a lot of these early medieval dates, may not be the actual year, but it's the one most people seem to use. Our fourth place on the list goes to a country I bet a lot of you weren't expecting, Vatican City, since we can very justifiably consider the modern city-state to be a direct successor to the Papal States, founded by the donation of Pepin in 754. On list 2, Sweden comes in with 970 as the approximate year that Eric the Victorious inaugurates the Swedish kingdom. For the smug know-it-alls slamming the words Kalmar Union into the comments right now, that was a personal union, not an actual union. Sweden and Denmark remained fully legally separate, even if Sweden was effectively a satellite state to the Danes, so continuity was never broken. Fifth place for the continuity breaks list gives us Croatia, with the Duchy of Croatia being founded around 810. Wikipedia gives an earlier date in the 7th century, but I think that might denote when the Croats first settled in the area rather than the founding of an independent state. On the other list, we have Portugal, which gained independence from Leon in 1139, and before anyone says Iberian Union, refer to what I said about Sweden. With Europe covered, let's move on to its conjoined twin, Asia, which is going to leave most of Europe in the dust. Asia's oldest country, when allowing for breaks in continuity, is China. Traditionally, the first Chinese dynasty is the Xia, which would have been founded around 2000 BC. There's a lot of skepticism about the existence of the Xia. It straddles that uncomfortable middle ground between legend and reality, but archaeological finds of the Erlito culture provide some evidence, albeit nothing certain, of the Xia state. It doesn't really matter since the next dynasty, and the first to be 100% confirmed, the Shang, still puts China in first place with a start date around 1600 BC. Not allowing any breaks in continuity, and Japan swoops up the gold medal. Early Japanese history is much like China's, shrouded in myth and confusion. The traditionally given date is 660 BC, when the first emperor, Jimmu, ascended the throne. However, the legends also state that Jimmu lived to be about 140, so probably not super reliable information. The first emperor who is considered to be definitely historical is Kinmei, whose reign started around 539, but Emperor Ojin, whose reign traditionally starts in 270, with the start of the Kofun period, is the earliest that might have been historical, but we don't have anything concrete. I'm going to use Oj's accession here and give Japan the 270 as a sort of compromise between Jimmu and Kinmei. Japan's position is further complicated by the Sengoku period, as well as the Northern and Southern Courts period, but I'll let it slide. Asia's second place, with breaks in continuity, is Israel, with the original Israelite kingdom being founded around 1010 BC. It's disputed if the united monarchy described in religious texts actually existed, with some people arguing it only concluded what would later be called Samaria, but regardless of its scope, there was a kingdom there founded around that time. Comment section for this one is going to be real fun. Without continuity breaks, second goes to everyone's favorite sultanate, Oman, which gained independence with the downfall of the Umayyads and rise of the Abbasids in 749. Oman has been vassalized by dozens of powers at various times over its history, but vassalization doesn't prevent it from being a separate country, so before anyone starts shouting about the Seljuks, please shut up. In third place, we have Vietnam. In legend, Vietnam was initially founded by the Hongbang dynasty around 2879 BC. This date is questionable, and it's more likely a state emerged in what is now northern Vietnam around 600 BC. I'm not sure where I got that number, but it's what I have in my notes. Without continuity breaks, number 3 is China, with the reunification of the country by the Song dynasty following the collapse of the Tang, and the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms period. Ever since then, there's always been a Chinese state of some kind, even with the upheavals brought by later dynastic changes. Fourth place on the list goes to Iran, with the foundation of the Achaemenid Empire in 559 BC, with Persian independence from the Medes. The Medes themselves could be considered for Iran's number here, but Iranian imperial tradition is generally considered to start here. On our no continuity breaks list, the number 4 spot also goes to Iran again, using the establishment of the Safavid dynasty in 1501 as our date, which ended a period where Iran was largely divided between various states, and something that could be called a Persian Empire was brought back into being. To finish Asia, Sri Lanka takes the 5th place on list 1, with the kingdom of Tambapani, founded in 543 BC. Now, Sri Lanka's history is pretty complicated, with the island often being split between several states, but Sinhalese tradition considers the string of kingdoms comprising Tambapani, Anuradhapura, Polonnaruwa, Dambadenia, Gampola, Kotte, Sidawaka, and Kandy as being successors to each other, even when they overlap, so I'm counting it anyways. It might seem weird, but there is a precedent elsewhere with how the kings of Sukhothai and Ayutthaya are both considered part of the same list of Thai kings, even though there's a period where both had separate states. On our second list with no continuity breaks is Bhutan, which broke off from the Tsangpa kingdom in 1626, though the country wouldn't take on its modern form as a centralized monarchy until 1907. Moving on to Africa, and no one is surprised who takes the top spot here, Egypt. Founded approximately in 3150 BC by the big catfish about town himself, Pharaoh Narmer. 3150 BC is of course an estimate, but it doesn't matter, because even if the date were to be 2,000 years off, Egypt still wins. Without breaks in continuity, then we have to fast forward nearly 5,000 years to Liberia's independence in 1847. Second place in Africa easily goes to Ethiopia. The Ethiopian Empire was founded in 1270, but its emperor is claimed to be descended from the kings of Aksum, a kingdom founded sometime in or before the 1st century. It could be older, we don't really know. I'm gonna go with 100 BC. Now, it's not certain that Yekuno Amlak, the founder of the Ethiopian Empire, actually descended from the Aksumite kings, but I don't have any reason to doubt it either, so I'll believe him. Aksum itself may be able to trace its roots even further back to an obscure kingdom called the Amat, founded around 700 BC, but so little is known about the Amat or the origins of Aksum, so I'm going to err on the side of caution and exclude it here. Our second place winner for the no continuity breaks list is South Africa, gaining independence in 1910. In third place, list 1 gives us Rwanda. being founded approximately in 1460, the most common year given for the start of the reign of Kigeli I, the first historical Rwandan king. Like a lot of other countries, there are legends that go back way further. The legendary founder of Rwanda, Gihanga, is said to have lived during some time between the Bronze Age and the 11th century, but there's no real evidence for this. On list 2, Africa's bronze medal goes to Egypt, and the most recent of many restorations of independence in 1922, after a brief period of British rule that started during World War I. For 4th place, we have Algeria, with the foundation of the Regency of Algiers in 1536. Now, Algiers was an Ottoman vassal for its entire existence, but as far as I'm aware, unlike Tunis or Tripolitania, it was never actually part of the empire itself, so we can use this date for our list. On the other list, we have Ethiopia, with the restoration of its independence after a period of Italian rule in 1941. To round out Africa, our 5th place for list 1 is Burundi, founded around 1680. Like Rwanda, Burundi has a legendary past that goes further, but 1680 is approximately when we can be certain that the Burundian kingdom existed. List 2 gives us Libya in 1951, the first African country to gain independence in the post-war independence wave, when British-administered Tripolitania and French-administered Fezzan were united with the independent Emirate of Cyrenaica. We're almost at the end now with Oceania, and the gold medal for list 1 goes to Samoa, in the form of the Tui Manua Empire. Information about this empire is hard to come by, but I went to the date of 600 AD for some reason. Our strict continuity list starts with Samoa's next-door neighbor, Tonga, which broke off from them around 960 and went on to usurp its previous position as the paramount power in Polynesia. The silver medal for allowing continuity breaks is Tonga. Self-explanatory. On the other list, 2nd place goes to Australia, with its independence coming on New Year's Day, 1901. Some people might want to argue that something with the Statute of Westminster is the correct date for Australia, to which I say it's not my fault you don't understand how the Dominions work. Go back to Reddit with the other Dunning-Kruger brainlets. 3rd place on list 1 goes to Australia's weird little brother, New Zealand, which was first founded as the United Tribes of New Zealand by Maori leaders in 1835. The United Tribes only encompass a small part of New Zealand, but it was these tribes that signed the Treaty of Waitangi, laying the foundation for modern New Zealand. 3rd place on the other list goes to also New Zealand, independent 1907. In 4th place is Fiji. In 1865, the chiefdoms of Fiji briefly united into the Confederacy of Viti before breaking up just 2 years later. On our other list, the spot goes to Samoa, which regained its independence for the most recent time in 1962. In 5th place is the lovely island of Niue, which was united into a kingdom in 1876 and later petitioned to be a British protectorate to protect it from a fate worse than death, being French. The other list gives us the Cook Islands, independent in 1965, with a status much like that Niue would later get. There's one last thing to say about Oceania, and that's the matter of Nauru. Nauru was an independent kingdom before becoming a German protectorate in 1888, but the thing is, no one has any idea when this kingdom was founded. It has to have been before 1875, when we for sure have a king named Oeda, but there's just so little information that we can't even guess when it was founded, so I've left it off the list entirely. Sorry, Nauru. So, with every continent now covered, mostly pointlessly, what are our lists looking like? So, the 5 oldest countries in the world, if we allow for breaks in continuity, are number 5, Iran, number 4, Vietnam, number 3, Israel, number 2, China, and number 1, Egypt. The 5 oldest, if we do not allow for breaks in continuity, would be number 5, Denmark, number 4, France, number 3, Oman, number 2, San Marino, and number 1, Japan. Of course, like I established at the very beginning, this is a really messy topic and largely up to interpretation, so don't take these lists as the absolute truth. It's just my own interpretation to the best of my ability, so in effect, we've kind of learned nothing. This video was a waste of time for both you and me. Have a good day.